Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. And I don't know if you've ever been to biggerpockets.com, but it is the biggest um, real estate investing website. And I really liked reading the forums and learning about other people's experiences. And I thought this was a really interesting post. And this was from 5 years ago about frustrated about lack of cash flow. And it says, long story short, my fiance and I own five properties in U.S. and Canada, generating about 88,000 gross annual rental income for our single-family homes and one duplex. However, our estimated cash flow is $6,500 after all everything. You know, PITI, which is the mortgage payment, property management fee, 8% vacancy, and estimated capex and maintenance. Right? Really interesting that this person owns five properties, 88,000 in annual gross income, and then after all your expenses and debt service, from those five properties, it's 6,500, uh, I guess per year, and yeah, annual cash flow. So again, cash flow is with rental properties is a little bit. It's not what you think it is because a it depends on how much you bought it for. B, if you put a down payment or not, and C, if you have debt on it or not, right? So if you do have debt, that cash flow is pretty much going to be at around zero. In fact, if you go into one of the articles, and I've showcased this article in other videos, where it says what is good cash flow for rental property. When considering a good cash flow rental property, you can aim for $100 to $200 a month for per unit that you buy, and you might be thinking, "Wow, only $100 to $200 per month?" Yeah, exactly, right. $100 to $200 per month. You may have a $200,000 loan, and that would be considered to be good cash flow. So I don't know about you. If I'm going to spend $200,000, maybe I'd rather go to law or medical school and make at least 10 grand a month and not $200 a month. Now, I have my own personal reasons why I wouldn't want to go to medical or law school because I certainly have no interest in being a lawyer or a doctor. But I'm just saying that we have to think about our rate of return. And if we own five houses and all we're making is what, a couple grand a year, uh, we have to understand what the purpose of the rental real estate is for, and understand what is normal in that industry or in housing, right? What is the normal cash flow? So we know $200. If you get $200 a month, that's pretty good cash flow, right? Is that crazy? And we'll just kind of do a quick analysis or just kind of a few talking points that basically when you have debt, that makes cash flow go to almost zero, right? And I was looking, when I got my first rental property, I was just kind of looking into, oh, should I get a property manager or not? I don't know about where you live, but in Georgia, a property manager takes like the complete first month's rent, right? Like, so if your rent is 2,000, they take the whole thing for the first month, and then they get like 10% or 5% of like the other monthly rent. But I was thinking, like, dude, if your cash flow is 200, now again, maybe that $200 a month includes a property manager, but it's just like it's crazy. Like a property manager, at least here, because I've talked to several people, they say, oh, that's standard. We'll take a month's worth of rent, which is a lot, which is why I don't use a property manager because it's like, you know, if all I have to do is work one day every 6 months to as a landlord, then I'm not gonna, what do I need to hire a property manager for to take my rent? And I'm not discounting property managers. It's just I don't have 20 homes, right? So again, $100 to $200 a month of cash flow is good. Debt service makes a cash flow near zero, and even discounted properties can have zero cash flow. So, for example, I bought this property, $200,000, and it has a value of 300. So even if you buy it at a discount, right, the debt service is kind of pretty much gonna eat up your cash flow, even at this um, price. And so if you buy it at 300,000, you're definitely in the negative. Like you bought it at full this 330 retail value, you're over. But let's just assume, the best case scenario that we get a $200 cash flow for 30 years. Now this is the bank's ideal scenario, right? Because the bank wants you to do all the work, hard work as a landlord to collect interest. And so if you have a $200,000 loan, and if you don't know about interest rates on loans, if for investment properties are higher than personal homes, because if crap hits the fan, we'll say that What are you going to pay first? Your personal mortgage or your personal stuff, or your investment property mortgage, right? You're going to pay your personal mortgage first, which is why they charge higher interest rates for those mortgages for investment properties because there's more risk, right? And so let's just assume that if we do have $200 cash flow for 30 years, that's $72,000 for 30 years for the life of a loan. And if you get a $200,000 loan, and we'll just say, and I'll put 8%, right? 8%, okay, for 30 years, okay? So 30 years, how much is the bank making, right? And you can see right here that after 30 years, the bank is going to make $328,000. So that's far beyond the cost of a loan. $328,000, okay? And whoopsie, let me go back here. Oh, wrong place. All right. So $328,000 if you actually hold on to the property for 30 years. So the bank has basically made about mm, four, five, almost five times more than you did. And you did all the work. You had to find the property. You had to manage the tenant. You did all the work, and they just sat there and collected interest, which is rent on your money. So they were kind of like a landlording themselves, but with their money, right? Interest is rent on your money. And so, who is this arrangement better for you or better for the bank? Like, do you want to work 30 years? Yeah, there's equity in there, right? Obviously, even on day one, there's a lot of equity, but in terms of cash flow, do you want to work and manage tenants for 30 years just to get $72,000 of cash flow while the bank is making $328,000? And that's assuming there's no eviction, everything goes well, right? Like, again, $200 of cash flow for 30 years. Who wants to do that, right? You know, I don't know if you ever like had this situation in school when you're in like group projects where like maybe there's like five people and one person or two people are doing all the work. It's the same thing here. Like this is like a school group project. Like this is you doing all the work, and then this is that person who just kind of skates by and gets an A in the class just because you did all the work, right? So this is what I think, in my point of view, this is quote traditional rental real estate, even when you buy it at a discount, right? Yeah, you have $100,000 of equity in day one, but in terms of cash flow, what are you getting? And there's certain areas of the country where all it is an equity play, and the bank is going to make all this money after 30 years. Yeah, you get equity, but you get zero cash flow, right? And they made all the money, and you did little to no work. Or wait, let me say this again. You did all the work and they made all the money, right? And so I don't think this is fair. And here's the thing. I love rental real estate, right? I got a rent check. Again, this is May 31st, 2024. Guess how much I got from one tenant? 14 grand, right? And so when I get this, after I deposit this check, I'm going to do something called velocity banking, because what we're going to do is show how we can switch these numbers. I want to make sure that I get paid more than bank if I'm holding on to this thing for 30 years with one house, right? And so because I want the most stress-free experience and I don't want any sort of management headaches, and partly because I'm lazy, I don't want to deal with multiple houses. Okay, I'll just deal with this one house and we'll see what my rate of return is. Okay, and we're going to do this thing called velocity banking to kind of flip the switch, or turn the tides. I don't even know what phrase it is, but we're going to do velocity banking to kind of reverse the situation. Okay, so what is velocity banking? All it is a debt payoff strategy using lines of credit as your main tool, and all you need to do it is just have a budget and then have a line of credit as your main operating account. So as you can see here, we have a budget, average American, income, expenses, you have all your debts. Now, one of the things I want to show you here is, in my opinion, this is just me, I would never get into a rental property unless I was comfortable with the tenant not paying. Meaning, like, I'm prepared for the worst case scenario. So if the tenant does not pay, so we have three credit cards here. We have an investment mortgage. We have a personal mortgage, meaning we're investing in rental properties. But let's say the tenant does not pay, right? The tenant does not pay. Okay. Um, are you going to be okay, right? Here we're kind of on the edge, like $739. That's a little bit uh, risky. I don't know if risky is the right word. It's a little bit tight for me if the tenant is not going to pay. So we'll assume for now we're not going to invest in real estate until maybe we paid off our personal debts. Like this is a three credit cards here, and then we'll do velocity banking afterwards, or we'll how should I say this? We'll do investment property or how to velocity banking with our rental property after we paid off our own personal debts. So it's kind of like how they say in the airplanes, put your mask on first before you put it on your child. Well, your child is essentially the business or the rental property in this case. Take care of yourself first before you go ahead and put the mask on the business, if that makes sense. All right, so now what we need now is essentially a line of credit as our main operating account. Because we're a homeowner, let's just assume that we have something called a home equity line of credit. So, home equity line of credit is essentially a credit card based on the value of your home. And we'll say we have $50,000 available to us at a 10% interest rate, right? And what we're going to assume is two things: same income, and we're doing really well with the savings. But you know what? Instead of actually saving money, we're gonna make sure this goes to zero. Complete opposite of what Dave Ramsey teaches, right? Step one is save $1,000. We ain't gonna do that. So now, what we're going to do, okay, what we're going to do is that we're going to have a number called cash flow, which is income minus expenses, right? Income minus expenses. And then once we use, so this is going to look very similar to savings, but once we use the line of credit as our main operating account, this is going to increase on day one, right? And how do we do that? Okay. Well, this is the part where the bank, quote, hates what you do. And this was inspired by these ads from a long time ago where like professors hate him or something like that. Like, I don't know if you've seen those ads, but it's like an old style ad about like learning a language. Like linguistics professors hate this guy. For you can learn a language in 10 days. Same thing. Banks hate landlords who do this, right? But let's still go ahead and do this. So let's go ahead and move these three credit cards to that line of credit. And how much is this? This is 13 plus 15. So I think it's $28,000. So let's move this $28,000 to this line of credit. Okay. And our goal in general is to maximize this cash flow number. So just by moving these three cards into that line of credit, again, we haven't paid off the debt, but what happens to the payment simply by transferring it? The payments go to zero, right? 0, 0, 0, right? Three zeros. And then now we went from $2,200 of savings, which is really good, into even better, which is $3,000. So once we get that rental property, we'll be in a much stronger financial position because, again, we always have to assume the worst case scenario. Not every tenant is going to be a tenant who gives you a 14 grand check and you literally just work one day every 6 to 7 months. I know I'm in that position, but not everybody's in that position. Some people select bad tenants. So if we're in a position where the tenant doesn't pay, well, at least I will be okay, right? Okay. So now, what's the actual strategy itself? Well, what you do is you put your entire paycheck into that line of credit, expenses out, and then after every single month, the balance of that line of credit is going to go down about $3,000, right? That's the velocity banking actual strategy. And so what we're going to do is just now calculate it. Again, I'm going to go through this really quickly because I think I do this every single time, and maybe I do need like maybe if there's enough demand, I might have like a super slow beginner session where like it's going to take me like 10 hours just to do this whole sheet step by step because I know there are some of you who want to do the sheet step by step and have me do it with you. I know those people exist, and when I say those people, I don't mean that what's it called? Pejoratively, prerogatively. I don't even know the word in a bad manner. Let's say that. Okay, so this is gonna be the previous month's balance plus the previous month's interest minus. So the next balance is gonna be these two minus the cash flow, which is 3129.59. Okay. And then how do we get the interest? The interest is taken by the average daily balance. So now what you do to calculate the interest is there's a function right here called average. So just take the average right here multiply it by the interest rate, which is 0.1, and then divide by 12. Okay. And so now what we do is just copy these. And again, look how much little interest we pay. The first month's only $220, right? $220. But let's go ahead and copy and paste this. And you could see in under a year, in 10 months, we paid off this 28 grand of debt, right? These 3 credit cards. So we'll put this as milestone right here. 10 months, 28K. We paid all these 3 credit cards off under a year. So simple. And now we could decide, hey, do we want an investment mortgage? Do we want to get a rental property? And if we do get a rental property, and actually let me change this to 200,000. My bad, not 190. But let's say we do get a $200,000 rental property. Okay, what's the payment? Let's take a quick look. The payment is $1,467.53. So we just put that here, account for a budget. And let me put that right here. So here we didn't invest in real estate yet, but now we're at a point, okay, let's go ahead and invest in real estate. And I'm actually going to take off this not yet. And then, so now it's 1467.53. Okay. 1467.53. Now take a look at this here. If the tenant doesn't pay, at least, right? At least you'll have $1,600 in cushion, right? But it's much better than what we had before. But I'd rather have maybe 2 or 3 in cushion every month, even if the tenant doesn't pay. But that's just me. But I think this is a decent number. But now what we have to do is that since we're getting a rental property, let's say a $300,000 rental property for $200,000, kind of like this. Let's just assume that the rent here is about $2,000 a month. Okay. So what we got to do is we got to add this right here into our income. So plus 2000. And if you want to actually put the net income, meaning after all expenses are paid, you just multiply that by 0.7. So 0.7, it means that you get 70% of the tenant's income. That's your net income. So that's how you kind of add it. You don't get 100%, but sometimes people get confused. Like, if I give you $2,000 of rent, don't you have to, aren't landlords super rich and they get all the 2,000 or close to it? Nope. In the best case scenario, they'll get 70%. Now with debt service or debt, that's the reason, because think about it, you have $2,000 of income a month and your mortgage is 1,400. And if you have a property manager, that's going to be more expensive. You have to also include taxes, insurance, maintenance, all that. Heck, we might even be a negative cash flow situation, but we're thinking optimistically here, right? We're thinking optimistically. So let's go in here and assume now that our income has increased to 7,400. Okay, 7,400. All right, so now let's go ahead and do this. So let's just kind of do something called chunking. I don't know if you've heard of that, but all it is just moving partially your mortgage into your line of credit and paying off with this cash flow. So let's assume that, let's just do a quick sanity check. So how long, if we go by the bank schedule, will it take us to go from 200 to 190K? 200 to 190K, right? So let's just go in here. So 200,000, how long is it going to take to go to 190K? About 5 years. Okay, about 5 years, right? So why don't we just do this? Move the 10K of the mortgage to the line of credit, and then we'll just add, let me just do this right here. Okay, and then move $10,000 to that line of credit. How long did it take using this method, using your line of credit as your main tool? 3 months. So something that if we're just doing the traditional income minus all of your whatever it called expenses minus debt service, it would have been $200 of cash flow, and we would have paid about 15 times 5. How much is 15 times 5? Let me just calculate it right now. 15 times 5. $75,000 of interest for those 5 years, and we would have gotten $200 cash flow a month. So that would have been, what's 200 times? Oh shoot, I can't even do basic math anymore. So 200 times 12, 2,400, right? 2,400 in cash flow while the bank was making 75 grand, right? But if we do it this way, this is one way we can use to help us pay off that that debt, and they call it chunking, they call it incremental payoff, but it's just one easy way to help us pay off that investment mortgage. And so again, luckily we have this velocity banking calculator here. We can plug and play and predict how long it's going to take us to pay off that mortgage. Now, I really think the importance of this calculator is to help us understand that if we do the strategy with the line of credit, we never want to put the entire line, or I'm sorry, entire mortgage into a line of credit. That's not good, right? And I'll show you why. That if there's anything that you can take away from this, it's just don't put your mortgage into a line of credit, or at least in my opinion, that's what I think. So let me just show you. Let me just put my income and expenses. And if you don't know where I got this calculator from, it's from Renatus. This is where I first learned velocity banking. I actually sell their education as an independent contracted marketer. So one of the reasons I created this channel is just to kind of garner some interest for Renatus, so and share what I've learned. So not only velocity banking, I've learned so many other things too. But I am an independent contracted marketer for them. All right, so let me go ahead and what am I doing here? I put my income, which is 7,400, right? Because it includes the tenant's income, 7,400, and then the expenses is everything except for the mortgage, because the mortgage is accounted for here. So let's go back here, and that'll be 2870.41. So it's going to be these two. So let's go back here. Oh, my screen is just blacking out. All right, so 2870.41. Okay. And let me go ahead and refresh this. Okay, so now we do what I want to show is that you could just put, I think the optimal chunk amount is just somewhere near your paycheck, right? I might be wrong about this, but all I want to show is that you don't put your entire mortgage into a line of credit. But let's just do this 200,000 chunk amount at 10% HELOC, right? So look at the payoff: 4.6 years and 50 grand instead of paying 320. Pretty good, right? Some might say it's pretty good, but what if we did this? Instead of putting the whole $200,000 in a line of credit, why don't we just do $10,000 and just keep repeatedly paying that 10,000 off? And you see how this number went from like 50 to 37, right? So again, I've never seen a situation unless the interest rate is like lower than this. So even at like the same interest rate, let me just show you here, 200,000 at 8%. The scenario is pretty much identical, except for whatever reason this actually gets paid off earlier than doing the chunking method. I don't know why, right? But what I'm saying is that there's really no benefit to putting the entire mortgage in line of credit unless it's like the same interest rate. That's all I'm saying, right? So if you do 10, look how this increases, right? But if I do 10,000 here, this goes to, again, this is the lowest that you pretty much can get. And even if you did 30%, let's say you use a 30% credit card, okay? So right now, remember this number, 37,000, 45, and that's still lower than putting this entire $200,000 in a 10% line of credit. Isn't that weird? I didn't know this until I took these Renatus classes. So, all right, let me go back here. So do 10%. And so now it took us 4.5 years, okay? So let's just write here. So for this investment mortgage, and let me reload this. Okay, so for this investment mortgage, it took us 4.5 years to pay it off, right? 4.5 years to pay off 200K. And so let's just go back here. And so what we're going to do is just compare this to velocity banking real estate, or we could call it VB. Well, let me type it up. Velocity banking real estate. So instead, okay, so instead of having this $200 of cash flow for 30 years, it's going to be 1,700, because 1,700 is what we call our net operating income, meaning what we get if there's no debt, right? So 1,700 And if it took us let me go back here, 4.5 years to pay this off, then let's just assume we're just not taking any money from this rental real estate for about 25.5 years, right? So 25.5 years, I'm sorry, no, 4.5 years, we're not taking any income. But for 25, but once this is paid off, 25.5 years, okay, 25.5 years, that'll be the predicted cash flow. Now, again, I know that rents will go up and all that stuff, but we'll just assume that this is cowboy math and, make the math easy so we understand. I guess I don't know if this is apples to apples, but again, we're assuming a 30-year hold, right? 30-year hold, okay? But let's just do a quick calculation of what 1700 times 25.5 is, and oopsie, 1700 times 12 months times 25.5, that's 520K. 520K, okay? And if this bank loan is paid off in 4.5 years, okay, 4.5 years, you can just refer to the calculator right here of how much we paid the bank, which is about 38K, okay, 38K. 38K. Boom. So which one do you prefer? Do you prefer to, get a traditional rental whatever and then post on Bigger Pockets like, "Hey, I'm so frustrated that I'm getting such little cash flow," which is like, you got five houses and you're only making a couple grand a year like cash flow from those five houses, or just have one house, be a little bit patient, and then once that loan is paid off, and even if you get a discount, again, once that loan is paid off, right? You get $520,000 just after starting from after 4 years, assuming you hold it for 30, right? And again, this I know because rents go up and all that stuff. This number could be a little bit variable and change. And then here, $200,000 after 4.5 years, the bank's only making 38, right? So what do you want the bank to make? 330 or 328 or 38? I prefer that they make 38, right? And this is why I labeled this clickbait video. Clickbait. Banks hate it when landlords do this, right? It's my clickbait video. Let me highlight that. Actually, yeah. Or landlords who do this, whatever. But here's the thing. I'll tell you why I love that rental real estate. It's because, again, I do maybe 1 hour work every 6 or 7 months, and I'm getting this rental check. Wink, wink. So, what do you think I do with this check? I'm kind of doing this right here, but instead of getting the rent monthly, it's kind of like getting like it's almost like commission based pay, meaning like not in the sense that your pay is erratic, but you get a big chunks every couple of months or so, right? But that's what I'm doing. And so, do you think, what situation do you think the bank prefers? This one or this one, right? So this is why I think, again, obviously banks don't really hate it because the bank is like, nobody's really there. Like, you ever go to the bank and it's just how cold and impersonal it is. So nobody has any like lifeblood in them hating what you're doing. But what I'm saying is that in their profit sheet, they expect to get this in the course of 30 years. And again, I know that they don't keep the note, right? Like, I know that, but I'm just saying, just this is an easy way to exercise, or easy way to imagine how much interest we pay. That's why I love saying banks have the tallest buildings in the U.S. But we're typically with mortgage, if you want to really know what happens to them, is that whoever originates the mortgage just sells it off to somebody else to collect the payments. So most of their money actually comes from like origination fees. And if you ever refinance something, oh my goodness, that's something that I wish I had known. That's like that's a lot of money just to refinance. I don't even know how people make Burr work with just the refinancing costs. Just get a line of credit on your home and do this, and then just rinse and repeat again, if that makes sense. But yes, I am flexing this check for 14 grand because the best part is, I'll tell you the best part. It's not just the 14 grand. It's the tenant thanking me after giving me the 14 grand. Right? That's the best part. All right. Well, that's it for today. Korean Atlanta mentorship again. Beautiful, beautiful Saturday. Probably need to make this the last video for today. Just enjoy the scenery, the sunshine, the fresh air. Well, have a great day, everybody, and we will speak next time.